Hello, and welcome to Unexplained Arkansas. This is Amber,
And this is Lisa.
and today we will be covering a story that is on the forefront of many people's minds this week, and that is the case of Morgan Nick. We had a different topic scheduled for this week, but due to the nature of last Wednesday's press conference, we both felt that this case should take precedence over what we had originally planned to do.
Yes. Big. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Um, I think everybody I know was watching that press conference.
I think so. I was subbing and I literally was, these kids were not doing anything. Anywho. I put it on in the classroom and
Okay.
I cannot tell you how many of the kids, these were senior kids, seniors in high school, and they were all glued to it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it's something that has been, on the minds of Arkansans for, almost 30 years. So
yeah.
the
My stepmom
mysterious,
in
oh, go
Missouri
ahead.
sent me a clip. Like she didn't even know that we were covering this or anything. I
Hmm.
hadn't mentioned anything to them and hadn't talked to her like this week at all, I don't think. Maybe just a little bit, but yeah, she sent it to me. So it's been everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere. Just such
And
a and it was so encouraging. I will say it was super encouraging to me for the Jared case that we just covered because it hit. I was like, you know what? Things can be solved,
yes,
30
definitely.
years later. So
Of
it was
course. Yeah.
encouraging.
Yeah. And I think that it was a coincidence, really, but also, it was kind of like one of those wow things that we did the
Hmm.
Jared episode, and we
Hmm.
didn't know that this press
Mm-mm.
release was going to even come out
No.
until Monday. I think is when they announced it, that
Yeah.
they had some significant findings. Now, we had all watched the documentary, like a lot of us,
Hmm.
a lot of people we run with, have all watched that documentary, and we were all talking about the hair found in the truck. So I
Yes.
thought that that was probably what
Hmm.
it all boiled down to, was that hair was probably found to be
Yeah.
hers. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't actually I knew it was there. I'd watched the Melissa Witt one on Hulu, but actually I hadn't watched. I was saving it. I was saving the
Hmm.
Morgan Nick one because and truthfully because I really a 6-year-old girl like that bums me out big time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I honestly did not want to watch it just because it makes me so sad.
Yeah.
I'm just
W- Scott and I
it
watched
all
it when
makes
it,
me sad, but this
yeah.
one, like children,
Yeah.
it hits a little different. It just
Yeah, it
does.
does. It does. Scott and I watched it, I think, when it first came out, and we both were just super sad, watching
Mhm.
it. And we actually had to watch it in segments. We couldn't
Mhm.
watch too much at once.
Yeah.
There's been several things like that for me.
Yeah.
But the mysterious case of Morgan Nick happened in 1995, and it
Oh,
has always been in the consciousness of Arkansans. As a teen, I remember the week she disappeared very well, because it was all over the news and
yeah.
everyone was talking about it. It was June, it was summertime, we were all doing baseball, vacations, you know what I mean? It was summertime in Arkansas, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everybody was everywhere. And I just remember my grandmother especially being so upset by it and wanting every one of her grandchildren somebody's eyes on them 24/7.
Mhm.
And a lot of people were, feeling the same way. I mean, for me, I had a little brother that was
Mhm.
exactly her age, and so it was scary. It was very scary. So if you were living in Arkansas in the mid 90s, you most likely knew the story of Morgan Nick, and you felt a real ache for her mother, and for the town of Alma. Um, so we're going to start with a little bit of the case history, and this comes straight from the Morgan Nick Foundation. I got a lot from that website because I wanted it to be accurate. I wanted it to come from the foundation that her mother now runs, because you hear a lot of different things here and there, like, but sometimes things aren't 100% true. So I wanted it to
Mm-hmm.
come from the best source possible. So that's why I
Mm-hmm.
got it from there. So Morgan Nick, who was 6 years old at the time, disappeared while playing near a Little League game in the Alma ballpark. And this was, again, June 9th, 1995. Now, am I saying Alma right? Is it Alma or Alma? It's Alma, isn't it?
I don't know, and I'm sure someone will tell us.
We will be corrected, I'm sure. But we're going to go with Alma
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's right. But again, I could be completely wrong. I would drive through that area to get to Fayetteville because I went to school in Fayetteville. And I think that's what it was called. So this happened, like I said, 1995. An unidentified man took 6-year-old Morgan Nick from this Little League ball game. During the game, Morgan had been with her mother and had, went to join a few friends who were catching lightning bugs, and she suddenly went missing. I guess the other kids came back, but she did not. The last sighting of Morgan was near her mother's car, where she had stopped to empty sand from her shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you remember if the documentary says anything else about that particular part of this?
No, just that, yeah, pretty much that she had gone to the game. It was just her and her mom, in that she was actually super shy. Like the kids had already been playing. This was kind of
Mhm.
nearing the end of the game. So she had actually like sat with her mom. She didn't, there wasn't tons of running around for Morgan. And I
Mhm.
think, the kids kept coming. There were two of them and they were like, I believe 11 and 8. They were a little bit older than her.
Mhm.
And like a boy and a girl. And they finally, I guess, talked her into it. And then she finally ran off and played with them. And then,
Yeah.
yeah. So, ugh.
So at the time, several witnesses noticed that there was a man observing a young girl while she was playing with other children at the park. One of the witnesses also had spotted a red Ford pickup truck with a white camper that was parked close by. And that kind of sticks out, right? Bright red truck, white camper, right?
It,
Um,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
It does sound like it, but evidently and kind of from other stuff that you may get into, like it
Hmm.
it was more common than not, which is
Hmm.
interesting to me back in that
Yeah,
time
me
frame.
too. Yeah, well, I do remember, now that you say that, I remember the trucks with the tops on them that
Hmm.
could. I
Yeah, a
once
lot of
rode the
people
Little
had
Rock
those
in one of
campers.
those.
Oh
I
gosh, Amber.
I did. Maybe I
Oh
shouldn't be telling that, but it was like
no.
1985, so I don't think we're going to get in trouble. But there was not enough seats in the cab, so
You
I
were
rode. I
you were
rode in. There was
like a
there was the top.
4-year-old?
Yeah, yeah, 4 or 5.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, it was the 80s. Things were
it was the 80s.
different. But yeah, that's weird.
It's not like I was in the back of a truck without the top on it. I mean, the top was on it. Okay, so but yes, so someone had spotted that red pickup truck with the white camper. So the camper was suspected to have some damage on it on the right side, and which we'll get into that, right? And it also was described as having a short wheelbase and was, I guess, it was dulled due to age. Yeah.
Like an
And
older
they,
model. Yeah.
like an older model. Yes. And they
Mhm.
believed that the truck had Arkansas license plates. Now the man they saw was described as a white 6 foot tall man with a medium to solid build, a mustache, and a 1 inch beard. At the time, he was believed to be 23 to 38 years old, and they also had a composite sketch that was used for a long time, right?
Mhm.
So at the time of her disappearance, Morgan was approximately 4 feet tall, 55 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. She had 5 visible silver caps on her molars, and she was last seen wearing a green Girl Scout t shirt, blue denim shorts, and white tennis shoes. Now, the FBI and local authorities and community began offering a reward, which got up to $60,000 for the recovery of Morgan, and then, of course, the identification, arrest, and conviction of the person responsible. So just a little bit about Morgan. She was born September the 12th, 1988. So,
She was
um,
younger than us.
yes, yes, she was about 7 years younger than me, 8 years younger than you. Yes.
Mhm.
She was actually 6 when she disappeared. So that would make her what now?
Mm,
37, 36.
mm.
36. I don't know. I can't do
Oh, the
math.
math.
35. Yeah, 35, 36, something like that. So
Mhm.
95 was 25 years
She'd
ago.
be turning 36. She would have just turned 36, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So again, she was very much beloved by her family, and this was just it was a tragedy beyond measure. It was something that, you know, capsulated like the news at the time. I mean, there was a lot actually. If you look at it, there was a lot going on in
Hmm.
Arkansas during that small time period of the mid 90s. And there was a lot of craziness going on. I mean, that was, right after the West Memphis Three had happened.
Hmm.
It was around right before the time of the blue light rapists, right, or around about.
Um,
It's all. It
yeah,
was
because that
about
happened.
that
Yeah.
same period. So there
Hmm.
was a lot to be fearful about in the
Hmm.
state of Arkansas, and people were not, I don't think, as trusting, as they had been in the past.
Yeah.
We had a couple of really significant cases also happen in our neck of the woods in White County that were just very tragic that happened around this same time. Of course, Jared's case. When was Jared's case?
94. Hmm.
94. So yeah, so there was a lot at
Hmm.
this time period in Arkansas. So, due to the lack of leads, it was like she just vanished, right? Many years went by with people trying to retrace those last few hours that Morgan was seen in public. And, according to witnesses, there were. They were pretty stuck on that red camper truck, and they were pretty solid about that was probably the last person to talk to her in public. Due to the nature of her disappearance, the lack of leads, but also the hard work by her family, this case gained nationwide attention really quickly. And it was all over the place, especially throughout the 90s, early aughts. It was featured in Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. Now, I
Hmm.
didn't watch either one of those episodes. Did you?
Mm-mm.
I don't
No.
remember when it was on there. I remember it making the news, our news,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
really didn't. I think we've gone through this before. I didn't read, I mean, I would have been what, 14 when this happened. I did not watch the news. My mom honestly was not one of those news people or bad news people. She didn't want to hear
Mhm,
that. So this was not on my radar. Like
mhm.
not. So,
Right. Now, in the documentary, they do talk to several people that, that had, that had stuff to do with the case. I mean, what stuck out to you as far as that? I wanted to kind of go back to the documentary, and I know you've seen it a lot. You've seen it like in the last few days. So,
oh yeah. Yes. So really I like how it does the documentary is the 4 part, and that first episode really dives into all of what happened that night.
mhm,
And that was interesting to me. And then of course much later on became interesting. But to me it was kind of like, when you hear someone's taken, you just think that, yeah, their parents were really not paying a lot of attention. It was the 90s
right,
and
and
they
she
felt safe.
was,
But she was, yeah, and she
yes,
was really paying attention, and it literally happened within like a 5-minute period, and a play like it was and they were kind of playing in the parking lot that they could see, but there were
yeah. And how
you
many
know
times have we as parents done that where they're
there
out
were
here and
blind
we can
spots, but
see,
yeah.
yeah, but we can see them,
Hmm.
but we're
Yes.
paying attention to something else,
Yes.
right?
And then and the kids come up, and it was like, okay, well, where's Morgan? Well, literally she was
Hmm.
gone in the blink of an eye. And that was super concerning to me, how quickly things can
Yeah.
just go bad. So,
And I think
real
that's
bad.
I think that's why everyone became, well, number one, they were alarmed because a 6-year-old was missing, but the terror of it all, because it could have
Mm-hmm.
happened to anyone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that family was,
Yeah, and the police department was right there,
yeah,
right there.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
It's
Um,
crazy.
so so I know you were asking on Facebook the other day about the Alma ballpark. Did
Hmm.
anybody ever respond to that?
So there was a lot of response, and I myself looked at it and then watching the documentary. The documentary mentions that at the time the ballpark was on Walnut. And so if you look now on Google Maps or your maps on your phone, the ballpark is on Main. It's close to
Right,
Walnut. So I
right.
think it's in the vicinity. It is not, they have redone those fields.
Mhm.
It's now, it looks like that's now like a parking lot. But yeah, everything's just newer in the last 30 years. But it is close. I mean, it's a block off, I believe, based on what the documentary said and what people posted. But people were, yeah, no one seemed to have the right answer. There was a lot of
Right.
answers, but
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's something else I kinda noticed about
Hmm.
this case.
Yeah.
Everyone is just, number one, just, so sad that this
Hmm.
that this happened, that somebody was able to get away with this.
Yes.
Yeah, and here we are 30 years later, still
Hmm.
asking the same questions, still going
Hmm.
over the same 5 minutes, just like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened in 5 minutes, and here we
Hmm.
are all these years later trying to go over exactly what happened in that small
Yeah.
amount of time. And for a long time, the police, that's what they had to work with, is trying to retrace those last few minutes and
Hmm.
who saw what and all of the
Yes. And
things.
going through, there were a lot of people, luckily, that were filming, their kids. They had their, you remember those big cameras out. They
Oh
had,
gosh, yes.
just those big video cameras and recording. And so there's recording, and there was a recording of Morgan sitting in the stands with Colleen, her mom, and for
Yeah.
most of the game,
Yeah.
so it's just sickening. And Colleen was not like, oh, go, they were both kind of, oh, are you sure you want to go? It was kind of like she really didn't want to go play. It's like, so for the most part. And then finally she's like, oh, I kind of did, I don't know. It's just like, what if I'm sure killed Colleen, for all those years. Like, just,
Yeah.
it's just,
Uh,
the whole thing just stinks. So,
yeah. So we are okay. So that was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we're about 5 days out from the presser where they did
mhm.
talk about, what who they think allegedly is now the prime suspect, right? So
The prime.
we're going to kind of delve into that because that's what's making that's what's rejuvenated, I think, a lot of people's interest in the case. Hopefully it will lead to more people talking that may not have
Hmm.
talked before, all the things, right? All the
Yes.
things. And,
Yeah.
as we'll talk about later, just saying what you know sometimes can make all the difference, right?
Hmm.
So the man that, and of course he has not been, he is passed now,
Hmm.
and we can't just say, oh, he did it right, but we can say that he is
Colleen
now the
says it.
prime. Yes, but we're just going to say the alleged suspect, Billy Jack Lincks,
Hmm.
and he has a pretty awful history, and
Hmm.
we're 5 days out now, so some really good reporters have gotten in there and tracked down, where he's been and
Hmm.
what he had been up to prior to the disappearance of Morgan, and then after. So, Billy Jack Lincks was convicted of sexual indecency after attempting to abduct a child just 2 months after Morgan Nick's disappearance.
Hmm.
And the victim told police that Lincks, who, we will talk about later, died in 2000, drove a similar vehicle to the one that everybody was describing in Morgan's disappearance. And, I read several articles about Lincks and, where he's from. And what I heard the most was that he was raised in Crawford County in western Arkansas. And, he was an ex-military person. He was in the Army during World War II. And then he worked at Braniff Airlines in Dallas from 1962 to 1974. So he was a military person and then a former airline employee. Now, he returned to Van Buren in the 1970s. And, he continued to pretty much have, a troubling life. Let's see. He did have a 1986 Chevrolet pickup truck that he owned, and it bore resemblance to the truck that was captured on that home video you were just talking about. They did capture that, and I think that's all over the place right now. People were looking at that, have been looking at that forever. So this is considered a prime piece of evidence here. Although there was initially a discrepancy regarding the camper shell on his pickup when he was arrested. And an interview with a neighbor during the abduction revealed that Lincks was believed to have had a camper shell on his truck, though, 2 months prior. The detail added to the mounting evidence against him. So that was...
And in the documentary, it was interesting because when they watched the video over and over, like they really didn't hone in on it. They were really focused on the composite. But they were, when they were looking at the video, they were like, this kind of looks like it could be doors. Like they really couldn't tell for sure if it was a camper. And then some people were saying, okay, it was a white and red truck because they were seeing the whiteness that we know now, but you were just seeing white and red. And so, and then on that video, it was weird because if you're just glancing at the video, it does kind of look like doors in the back of a truck instead of looking like a white camper shell sitting there. So there was a lot of confusion, especially in the 90s when they were first investigating and such. And by the time that this incident happened, 2 months later, the camper shell was not there.
Yes. So in around 1992, Lincks allegedly sexually abused another victim. There was an arrest affidavit from an Arkansas State Police trooper that recommended rape charges be brought against Lincks for allegedly sexually abusing a person under the age of 14. And so apparently starting...
Oh, sorry. In the documentary, it was his granddaughter.
Okay. Yeah. So following his arrest, he was ordered to be held on a $10,000 bail. In January 1993, he pled not guilty to the rape charge, but later accepted a no contest plea for first-degree sexual abuse, which was a Class C felony at the time, indicating acceptance of the punishment without admitting fault. Yeah.
Which is sickening. He didn't serve any time.
And how many times, and I'm not going to get on my soapbox because but maybe I am, I don't know. But how many times do we put people back out there that we know are dangerous and are not going to stop, right? How many times does this same situation happen?
Yeah.
In sickening amount. In different respects, different crimes, different things, right? So despite the severity of the charges, a judge ruled that Lincks would serve no jail time or prison time. Instead, he was mandated to complete a counseling program at the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Fayetteville and to pay a $500 fine in addition to the $130 court fees. So
that's just gross to me. It's just gross, especially considering what all he did after. But I mean,
so it is noteworthy to also mention, and let me tell you that I got most of this from KSFM Channel 5. I do need to say that they were the ones that, were pretty much the first this week to come out with all this information about his track record. And so I do want to kind of cite them for doing all the legwork with that. But it's also noteworthy that the charge of first degree sexual abuse, which is what he pled to, no longer exists in Arkansas law. So, for context, the only Class C felony related to sexual assault abuse of a minor in Arkansas is sexual indecency with a child, which carries a punishment of 3 to 10 years in prison.
And now, if I'm wrong, now everything is much worse because even just
Mhm.
child pornography is a
Yes.
felony, and you're going to
Yes.
spend,
Yes.
lots of
So,
time. So,
I mean, they were working in a way, they were working with the laws they had at the time,
mhm,
right? And he was able to skirt through some of this, and yeah, so that's what happened. Um,
mhm,
so according to KSFM Channel 5, a major part of the case against Lincks is the fact that he was convicted of trying to abduct an 11-year-old girl only 2 months after Morgan disappeared, and only 8 miles away from that Alma ballpark. So, I mean, that's
mhm,
that's that's either the craziest coincidence ever, or there is some kind of connection. So, this
mhm,
happened at a Sonic parking lot in Van Buren, right?
yes.
Um, so just 8 miles away from that ballpark where the victim went missing. So this abduction attempt, thankfully,
And
did
where
not.
he was living, yeah.
Yeah, it was where he was living.
Mhm,
Yes, this abduction attempt occurred mere weeks after the victim's disappearance, raising further suspicion. Yeah.
mhm,
So, in the original affidavit filed in 1995, a detective with the Van Buren Police Department said that around 6:45 p.m., an 11-year-old girl was walking in Van Buren with three of her brothers and another friend, and a white male in a red pickup pulled up to them and began talking about sexual matters. Now, this is, quote unquote,
mhm,
on the report from the detective. The man began by asking the girl, while still in his truck, if she wanted to talk money. And she replied, asking why money. According to the police, he asked her to come closer. She did, but asked her brothers and friend to get their bikes and come with her. The male then handed four $1 bills to the boys and told them to leave, to which they did, according to the police report. While they were alone, the man asked the 11-year-old girl to come home with them. She told him that she was not going to do that. It was then that he dropped a cigarette and asked her to pick it up, and she screamed and she
mhm,
ran towards her brothers. Somebody called the police, and yeah. So he, I guess, tried to flee at this point,
mhm,
and struck a wooden light pole beside the street, and there
mhm,
was some red paint on that pole. Right,
mhm,
so there you go. So in the court documents, the man was described by the kids as a white male with a black and gray beard, sandy brown hair, saggy cheeks, and wearing a red ball cap and brown uniform type shirt. So, a separate witness was able to get the red pickup truck's license plate number.
mhm,
And upon checking the license plate, they confirmed that it was Billy Jack Lincks as the owner. They checked his criminal history, and that's when they uncovered the 1992 sexual abuse of the other young girl. So officers reported to Link's home. They found a 1986 Chevrolet pickup truck with noticeable damage, and police arrested him for that crime.
mhm.
Yes. Yes. So,
Luckily.
luckily, yes. So he was arrested and he did go to prison for that one, right?
Mhm,
And then while he was in prison, he passed away.
mhm.
Yes, in 2000. So that's kind of a backtrack, leading up to where we got to, Wednesday. And is there anything you want to add to the history
Ooh.
there? Did I cover everything? I just want to make sure I got everything covered. Yeah.
I mean, there's oh goodness.
We're
On
getting to
that
the
on
last
that
stuff.
case, so yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on
Yeah,
that
oh, yeah,
situation
we're
with the
gonna talk
11-year-old.
about
Yeah.
the other one. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the one you're thinking of at the end here. So in 2020, um, they got the truck back. And do you know the story, the saga of the truck?
So, from what I understood from the situation, so when they found the truck, they impounded it
Right, right.
and they kept it in impound until it went to auction.
Yes.
Yes.
So why did it end up going to auction? I mean, I guess I should know
They,
that stuff. I mean, eventually
well,
they have to get rid of it, I guess,
yes.
but if he's
Yes.
still a suspect in an open case, why would they get rid of it? That's the question everybody kept asking me.
I don't know the rules if there was like a time frame or something because they had it for so
Yeah,
long, and at that time he was not a suspect. He was looked at early on, kind of, but as were other people with Morgan Hicks. But at that
right,
time when it went to auction, it wasn't like he was being looked at for Morgan's case because they hadn't kind of gotten back up to their going, full-fledged again.
right,
So yeah, so they probably have a time frame, and I'm just thinking it is amazing that it did sit there so long in the impound and then went to auction because who knows, had it been given back to the family, it would have, possibly not be around at all anymore.
right.
So just
I
the
think
circumstances actually helped preserve the truck. So,
yeah, I think you're right. I think you are
mhm.
right. I just that was the biggest questions that I had. The biggest takeaways was
Yeah,
about,
I would
you
I
know,
would think, I don't know, it
the
did
truck.
not say in the documentary what year it went to auction
Mhm.
to the owner that they got back with, once they ran the VIN numbers, but he was not on their radar at
Right,
that time.
right.
He was early on, and they actually did search this anyway. Yeah, his truck went through it then, but then, later on, now in 2020 or 2019, whenever they were reinvestigating closely.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's when they ran
And
the VIN number and found it.
he was being investigated as a person of interest in 2021, but it was before that, really, before they announced it, right?
Well, so the documentary began filming in 2019. And
Okay.
I'm sure it got delayed, what happened after that. So I'm sure there
COVID
was
and all the
a big
things.
delay. Yeah. So they were doing some heavy investigating at that time, but he had
Mhm.
been an original suspect
Right.
like way at the beginning. And then he was kind of, in the background. And then
And he was questioned, was he not?
I'm sure he was. Yeah, he was questioned at that time, and he passed a polygraph back when.
Well, okay.
And then
Yeah.
they kind of, again, they were early investigators, really put a lot on the what do you the composite. I can't say that word, composite, and he passed his polygraph, which
And the
I
composite was a younger dude.
oh yes.
This guy was old.
Yeah, he was 70 years old in 95.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't realize that when this happened, I guess when they were talking about when the announcement came out, I did not know a lot about the case. I did not realize he was 70 because that
Yeah.
blew my mind.
Mine too. Mine too, for
So, but
sure.
but yeah, he was at that time the truck. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to know when the truck went to auction, like actually
Yes.
went to this person. But they did not say that
Yeah. And
in the
see,
documentary.
and that's my lasting question with all that. It's just the journey of the truck, right?
Hmm.
So in 2020, there was evidence taken from the truck by the FBI. And during the FBI search, they found various forms of matter, it's how they described it, in Link's truck, including hair. Now, again, you have to think, where's this truck been? How
Hmm.
many, how many different people have now been in the truck? All the things, right?
Hmm.
So in December 2023, there was trace evidence from this search that was sent to a lab for DNA testing. And that brings us to this last week, September 27th, when the Alma Police Department, the chief, told us all during this live press conference that the hair found in the truck matched that of Colleen Nick or a child she'd given birth to.
Mhm. Yes.
And it was a very devastating, kind of moment. I mean,
Mhm.
it was, but at the same time, that is the most profound piece of evidence that has been obtained in the last 30 years.
Definitely, because
Yes.
they had nothing. They had nothing as far as actual evidence. No clothing was ever found. Nothing to
Nothing.
indicate that
Nothing.
Morgan was not living.
Right.
So
So it
yeah.
was it was a case of a missing person that
Mhm.
they, and let's just, look at some of the kids that were found later and they were
Mhm.
found alive. I mean,
Mhm.
it seems not plausible, but it
It
happens. It
does.
happens. And,
Yeah, there was, Colleen even says 2% of children taken in these situations come back. And so there's
right,
2% hope. Um,
right,
Plus, throughout the years, I'm sure, and this is terrible, of course, they have like what do you call that? The age progression out on
right.
Morgan. But, you know, so many times people would call in saying they saw Morgan.
Yes.
So,
Which probably stoked the fire of hope for the family, for the
mhm,
for the foundation, for the town of Alma, because, like we said before, this is a huge, huge case,
mhm,
in the state of Arkansas. I know that most of my friends and family were watching this. We were talking about it the day before. You and I were talking about it the day before, right? Trying to, guesstimate, trying to figure
mhm,
out what they may be talking about. Um, in Arkansas, and I think, unless you're from Arkansas, you don't get this. Maybe, I mean, maybe that's not the right way to say this, but in Arkansas, Morgan is kind of like all of our little girl, right?
mhm.
We all want justice and resolve
Yes.
for her family.
Mhm,
And, this press conference kind of sent a wave of frenzy across the states and social media. I started noticing an uptick of articles
mhm,
about the case. And, again, everybody was talking about it. A lot of people were talking about the Hulu documentary and what
mhm,
that could mean for the case. But,
mhm.
this break in the case, I think, rejuvenated, everybody's thought process regarding this case.
Yes. I definitely think the documentary was extremely helpful um in moving things forward. I just feel like you could definitely tell the team that was working on it, they wanted to do it right. And of course they're being filmed.
Yeah.
What I mean, I can't even imagine. And of course, not to say that that's the only reason they want it right, but that
Mhm.
kind of keeps you, I would think, I mean, that's going to keep you motivated and doing the best job that you
Mhm.
could ever do, considering they kind of knew that the ball, not to say was dropped on all those years, but there was a lot of things that did not happen in the investigation through the years. And of course, a lot of things that couldn't be done, but there was
Yeah.
missing items. That truck had been searched. That
Yeah.
truck had already gone through a search and had there was notes in the file that the truck, back in the 90s had been combed over, that there was a
Mhm.
blood sample taken, from the seat, like a cutout, sent
Mhm.
to the crime lab.
And what happened
And
to that?
it disappeared. It was never found.
Oh,
So
wow.
they really did have to start at square one, which really, I will say, in that amount of time that took over, it was really smart. But they did the smartest of things because they did bring in the teams from the FBI.
Right. I
The
think that was a good decision.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And definitely.
So so
Definitely.
during the press conference, Alma Police Chief Jeff Pointer, he spoke first, and I could tell just by his stance, by the way he spoke, that he was carefully choosing what he said, and he
Mm-hmm.
understood the importance of what he said. He knew that this was going to be carried probably worldwide, right?
Mm-hmm.
This it echoes like the Madeline, what was that,
McCann.
McCann
Mm-hmm.
situation that happened. Where was that? Was that Spain or
That was
Italy or
Spain.
Portugal? Okay, somewhere
One
like
of
that.
those.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
one of those European countries over there that listen to us, but
Yeah.
not really. Yeah, well, they show up
One
on the map.
person, they do.
One person maybe. But yeah, so it always reminded me of that case, which was another one where a child just vanished, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Pointer, I think, did a really good job with the press conference, and that's what I used to do. I was a public information officer, and so I really have to give props to people that get up there and say the hard things, because there's always going to be somebody that doesn't agree with what you said or thinks you should have
Mm-hmm.
said something else. So I think he did a good job. So he's quoted as saying, "As of today, for the first time I'm aware of, I'm calling Billy Jack Lincks a suspect in her abduction." And Pointer said that the bottom line indicates that Morgan was in Link's truck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even though this part of the mystery has been solved, Pointer said that it's not over.
Mm-hmm.
And, one thing stuck out that he said, "Where is Morgan now?" Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's exactly what he should have said, because it needs to be doubled down. Now let's find where Morgan
Mm-hmm.
is. Right.
Yep.
So during the press conference, Morgan's family was present and seated in the front row. Colleen, who also spoke, stated Morgan was stolen from their family. So Colleen said that Lincks didn't see he could never win because of our love for Morgan. Her memory and her voice outlasted his life. And that is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the memory of Morgan, has definitely outlasted this alleged suspect. So she she stood near a photo of her daughter, and she said that the love continues to shine. Her heart, Morgan's heart, shines on. And then she added that they've all had an army of supporters, advocates, and heroes who dedicated their lives really to finding Morgan. And they
Mm-hmm.
did. Her family just stopped what they were doing and
Mm-hmm.
put all their effort into finding their little girl.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the question is, where is Morgan?
Mm-hmm.
And what can we as Arkansans and concerned citizens do to help Colleen and the Nix family have closure and resolve? Again, what Chief Pointer said, I think, is key. Even if someone out there is listening to us today and they've heard something strange in the past 30 years or so, but they've shrugged it off, or if they thought they'd be implicated, now is the time to speak up. Just
Mm-hmm.
as we said in the missing case of Jared Green, you never think for a second that by saying something to help these families, you are doing the wrong thing, because you're not. You're doing the right thing. The
Mm-hmm.
right thing is to always speak up and to say what you know. Um, so, like I've always thought, these things rarely happen in a vacuum. And
Mm-hmm.
many times there is at least one or two people who may not have been specifically told, but they have suspected that a friend or a relative or a person they know did something, illegal or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I mean, these things don't happen in a vacuum,
No.
right? There's always people around that suspect. And,
Mm-hmm.
so just knowing, retracing where the suspect was that week could maybe potentially help to
Mm-hmm.
locate where Morgan is.
Yes, I would think so. And just looking at kind of the statistics on that, and then of course they had witnesses. They had witnesses that saw the truck that night that could pinpoint it to an area. They thought they saw, the red truck with the white camper and a little girl, in the front passenger seat. And they have, already been doing some digs. But I do think that, yeah, this obviously they at that time they were doing a lot of things. They were looking at, even at
Yes.
that, Charlie Ray Vines, who is a serial killer and who had confessed to taking Morgan. I mean, what a piece of crap. Um, they had all these things going on, but now it's exciting to know this is the person, this was the truck, like focusing on these areas, because they
Right.
did, even in the documentary, they were, pulling up a slab at a former house that Billy had lived at. And
Hmm.
so, and I'll just tell you, in my opinion, especially knowing his age, like, I can't
Less is
imagine.
more.
I
Like
mean, I
this,
just, yeah,
not
I
going very
mean,
far. Yeah. Yeah.
no, I don't see him doing. I mean, I guess he was savvy enough to do something with her, but I
Well, he
mean,
didn't go very far for the next potential
no, he
victim. I mean,
didn't.
he went 8 miles. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
he's
he was right
obviously not
there.
one that is going to drive very far.
Yeah,
Uh,
Alma was further than the Sonic for him, but just knowing he was in that vicinity, he was in Crawford County.
mhm,
I just don't see. I mean, he was, he was a smoker, he was a drinker. I don't
mhm.
see him being a healthy man, being able
No,
to just do all kinds of, things. So
right.
I pray that, yeah, someone can come forward with a hint at, and people
Right.
have over the years, but hopefully they'll get they'll get
Yeah.
it. So,
Well, and I want to know what he was up to between, the 1960s, the late 1960s and the early 70s around Dallas.
mhm.
You know, I mean, you can't
Yeah,
tell me that he was just, you know,
he was
straight laced during that time
he was
period
probably as
either. So,
devious as anything,
mhm,
probably
that's what
doing
I'm saying.
exactly
Yeah.
what he was doing in Arkansas.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
if he did
so
it
if
to his granddaughter, I mean, oh my goodness, Yeah, I think he was definitely doing similar things. And just the fact that he passed a polygraph and he never owned up to the Morgan Nick. I mean, he knew about it. And just, I mean, I don't even know what that is called, but that is really, I mean, he was a sociopath. I mean, just downright awful.
mhm,
So he was doing some awful things, I can only imagine.
yeah. Okay, so in 1995, after the case began, after Morgan disappeared, and the Alma Police Department, started this case that would ultimately span 30 years. Colleen began working as well on a foundation. She called it the Morgan Nick Foundation, and it was committed to supporting families of missing children and increasing awareness about child abduction. Colleen Nick, now her name is synonymous with, helping the families of missing and exploited children. She, for a long time, she was striving to keep that public interest out there, keep Morgan's name out there, right?
Hmm.
She was interviewed for the Still Missing Morgan documentary.
Hmm.
Um, so, it's been the top priority of Colleen and her family since 1995. And, again, they've worked with other families in similar situations. And I just, it's a testament to the kind of person Colleen is. She closed her private business, she began mobilizing resources and, trying to find her daughter, and
Hmm.
then eventually also educating the public so this kind of thing does not happen again. So now she's a nationally recognized advocate for missing and exploited children and adults. So, as a mother, the thought of living this kind of life is frightening and heart wrenching.
Hmm.
Colleen has never stopped looking for her child, and I doubt she ever will.
Hmm.
With
Yeah.
the love of a mother that's that strong, it should motivate everyone to want to help her as much as possible.
Hmm.
Um, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about is that connection to another case in the area of Northwest Arkansas. And, I read an article that I thought was interesting. It was a Newsweek article, and it talked about a connection between Morgan's case and that of the 1994 Melissa Witt case. The case of Morgan Nick shares similarities with the disappearance and murder of Melissa, who vanished a few months prior to Nick in a nearby city, with Witt's body being discovered 50 miles from where she went missing. So, due to the shared characteristics and the locations of the cases, law enforcement agencies have frequently collaborated in their investigations of the disappearances. Now, by collaboration, I'm not sure what they mean by that, but the FBI and local police joined forces in the early stages of the Witt investigation, and a breakthrough in the Nick case was reportedly linked to a lead in the Witt case. However, that was not it, right? It was the what was his name? The
Charlie
Vine.
Ray Vines. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes. Unexplained Arkansas will have a future episode on the
Mm-hmm.
Witt case. That will happen. And a lot of people have asked us why we didn't tackle some of these, very high profile cases early on. And
Mm-hmm.
we did a few that we knew a lot about, but there were others that we held back on because we wanted to make sure, we had a huge audience, or a big audience, which we have a bigger audience now, here
Mm-hmm.
10 months in or whatever. So we wanted to make sure that, like with the case with Jared and Morgan, that we knew what we were doing, that, we had substantiated an audience and things like that. I think Melissa Witt's case also is one we were kind of waiting on till we kind of knew what
Mm-hmm.
we were doing more with this podcast thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt about waiting on Morgan Nick. That's what I felt about waiting on Jared, that we just needed to kind of get our bearings before we tackled some of these like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so anyway, so the sharing of intelligence for these two cases occurred because of the short distance and the time frame. Nick was, of course, reported missing on June 9th, 1995. And then Witt disappeared in Arkansas the year prior, 1994, while she was on her way home from a bowling game with her mother. Witt was 19 years old. She was last seen alive in Fort Smith, which is less than a 20-minute drive from Alma. Her
Mm-hmm.
body was then recovered at the Ozark National Forest, which is a 2-hour drive away from the location where she was last seen. Witt was on her way to meet her mother when she went missing. Authorities found evidence of blood in her empty car, along with her belongings scattered nearby.
I have a lot of thoughts on that one for a later date, but yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot to that case, and like I said, we will do that one, sooner rather than later. But I kind of want to end on Morgan, and just talk about how we as Arkansans, I feel like it's our duty to kind of help, you know, see this through. We need to, if nothing else, support, pray, I mean, all
Mhm.
the things, any missing person case, the family wants resolve, right? Um,
Yes.
I mean, it's been 30 years. It's been 30 years
Mhm.
not
And
of a
it's,
mother
yeah.
not knowing where her child is.
Mhm.
And, I mean, a lot of us have grown up hearing this story and watching it unfold. And was, you know, Wednesday was a huge deal. It was a huge
Mhm.
break in the case. And, I mean, for everybody, that's why everybody stopped what they were doing
Mhm.
and watched it, because it was a huge thing for a lot of Arkansans to
Yes.
see that there is significant evidence that is
Mhm.
now
Yeah, that's
come.
huge to have any type of forensic evidence
Yes, and
30
you
years
know
later when you had nothing. That's
yeah, and
crazy.
and part of it is, in the mid 90s they knew the DNA was coming. I mean, they
Mhm.
knew it was coming, and so there were a lot of there were a lot of, police officers at the time. They knew it was coming, so they would collect it because they knew someday it might be used. And there
Yes.
are a lot of police
And I
officers that have
and I
done that.
hope, but even it's just interesting to me that even when they combed back in the truck, they
Right.
found the blonde hair and
Yeah.
they were excited about it. Even at that time, they sent this item to the FBI. And
Hmm.
even at that time, they could not do anything with it.
No,
And
no.
just recently, could this laboratory in Texas get enough DNA off of this piece of hair? And so in my head, it's encouraging, but it's also like, oh, how many other cases can they potentially help? Like think about
Right.
cases like the Zodiac and other ones that were never, that should have plenty
Right.
of forensic evidence that should have been saved. Who knows if it was, but
Yeah.
that if you can take just a piece of hair, not even the follicle, and get a DNA match, it's just really exciting. I hope that there's lots more to come, not only with Morgan's case. I pray that Morgan's found because of all this, but I really hope there's even more cases that are solved. So,
Right. And I think there will be. I really think that in the next 10 to 20 years, we will just, see a plethora of cases suddenly having these significant breakthroughs because the DNA is going
mhm,
to get better. All of that is going to get better. It's not going to go backwards. It's only going to go
mhm,
forwards. So, those police officers doing really good police work and collecting
mhm,
this evidence, even though they knew that there was no way to test it at the time, but they knew it was
mhm,
coming. Now, it can be used to, solve these cases that have gone cold for 30,
mhm.
40, 50 years.
Yes, and I think just, and now with all these documentaries and docufilms, I mean, shoot, you would think, I mean, there should just be such good training to go, when you're out there, on the job, they should just be able to do so much more with just more that now I now have all this knowledge and knowing that any little bit. Oh, and it was exciting. We didn't talk about this, but the fiber. So they were able to, like, part of what they found in the truck when they searched it was a fiber. And they were able to get a Girl Scout shirt from that
Yeah.
same time period.
Oh,
It
I did forget to mention that.
Yes,
Yes.
it was exactly the same shirt from the same time period, the same shirt, and they were able to do a match to that fiber. So there was the hair, and then there was the fiber from that shirt and the truck that was in the truck. So it was like
Yeah.
Morgan was in that truck.
I
So
wonder if a detective or police officer got one of those shirts at the time and just saved it all these years because that's
yeah, I don't know. They did not mention it in the documentary about where they got the shirt, so I don't
mhm,
know if it was something that was
that's
maybe
interesting.
maybe saved by like one of the kids in her troop. You know how
Could be. Yeah.
I know we somewhere, I think we still had some of it. Dee Dee was a Girl Scout. My sister, I was not. I did Girl Scouts for a minute and it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But anywho, yeah, it would be amazing to know, but somehow they were able to get it and then match that fiber as well. So that to me, just it was definitely to me a God thing that that truck is still around. That truck was just
Yes.
sitting and and had that much. Basically, they were able to take up the original carpeting in the truck and find these items. And so it's just outstanding that all of that was still there. So
Yes.
definitely, I'm sure I'm sure Colleen is it's like so sad, but so it gives her knowledge and just because it's just had to been so difficult all these years thinking that she is out there, and
Right.
just you know hasn't come home yet. So
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a
Well,
sad
that's
one.
all I have. We will. revisit this because I feel like this is just the catalyst for more things to come. So I feel
Yeah.
like, we will be talking about this again, hopefully
Yeah.
sooner rather than later.
I hope
So,
so. And I hope that there's just a whole lot more um, Hulu documentary and follow-ups. And then I hope that the Hulu documentary on Melissa Witt produces this type of groundbreaking,
right.
announcements on her case too. So
Yeah. I
there's
don't know,
there's
but
slots.
Hulu needs to call us because we've got some ideas for some documentaries.
Yeah.
So,
They
yeah.
have I have a good plug-in. I'll have to post on the thing. I watched another one and it was very interesting. Anyway,
I
so
think the
they
Ruby Stapleton case needs the Netflix
yes.
documentary treatment
I do
for
too.
sure.
And I think
Mhm.
it needs to be taken all the way back. I know it's old and the documentation and the evidence, but yeah, I think it could definitely be revisited and
Mhm.
refreshed and looked at with brand new eyes. So
Yeah.
it would be great. So yay. But I do have a correction, just a correction from
Okay.
last week's the missing case of Jerry Green. I said that the family lived in Houston, Texas. So they did not. So I did talk to Shannon this week, and she was so sweet about the episode, and it has produced um so many views, but also so many members joining the Justice for Jared page. So anyway, so they did live in San Antonio, so that is my correction. And so please go listen to that episode and join the Justice for Jared page. So, and also, if you do have any information on Morgan Nick, it's like 1-800 The Lost. And
Yes.
that's the phone number to call with any information. And we're going to put all of that
Yes.
content for the Alma Police Department. All that will be in our show notes.
Yes.
So yay.
All
All
righty. That's all
right.
I've got.
Okay.
Gonna
Well,
go get my boys ready for the week.
all
So,
right.
yeah,
Well,
Sunday night. It's usually midnight before I go to bed because,
uh,
yeah, that's my night of getting everything ready for the whole week. So,
yeah. And so it's a, it's always fun to get ready for the new week. I hate
yes,
Mondays, but anyway, but this is something we'll hopefully get some answers and prayerfully think on this one and pray for all those families that have all these missing children. So, goodness.
yes.
But yay. Well, love you guys and
Love ya. All
have a
right. See you
great
later.
week. Bye.
Bye.